What is the correct way to approach HEMA sources? Hello HEMA friends and welcome to this new video. Sources, books, historical manuals. HEMA is alive thanks to these marvelous documents which survived throughout the centuries. But how we should approach these sources? Should we behave like an ultramarine which strictly follows the doctrine imposed by the Codex Astartes without questioning it? Or should we relate more to the contingent necessities of our modern fencing environment and use them as a tool to help us achieving our goals? Should we use the books as a tool to learn how to fight now, in the present, or should we try to recreate in the most precise and unbiased way the ancient fighting methods, reconstructing the past, or what we think it was? Let's start by saying that there are now, among HEMA instructors especially, two ways of approaching sources, which I decided to arbitrarily name in a fantasy/dramatic way. The first ones are the guardian of a dead tradition, and the seconds are the children of the reborn tradition. The guardians of the dead tradition are those instructors who tend to be more Codex Astartes compliant, namely, they see in the manuals the quest, the mean, and the answer. Nothing can be found outside of the manual, if not in specific cases where the manual itself omits something or tend to be vague enough to let interpretations vary a little bit more. Everything which is done in the practice, or most of it, has to be related or sustained by the book itself. Nothing has to be reinvented, modified, or mixed with other sources, ideas, or cross-training activities. You are now probably imagining that among this family of HEMA instructors and practitioners, you will find only those who aren't into competitions at all, and which are only interested into the historical part of the source rather than its application. Funny enough, even if this happens in the majority of the cases, this is not true. I have found a number of instructors and fencers which, while being obsessed by the sources, in an almost dogmatic way, were able to fence following their rules and style in a functional and competitive way. This, of course, comes at a price. To be good enough to beat your opponent while at the same time limiting your repertoire of options in a conscious way asks for a high level of skill, the intelligence to put every technique at its proper place, and when the options available do not fit the case, the will to impose their own game to the opponent has to be strong enough to outmatch and overcome even the smartest trick and tactical solution of the opponent. So, this way of approaching sources is indeed more oriented toward research, but who excels into its practice and commits themselves into it completely can achieve astonishing results, even if this is true only for a tiny fraction of their followers, or worshippers, if you prefer. The second family are the children of the tradition reborn. Those instructors are the ones who, while reading the sources and learning from them, use them as a tool to find solutions for modern problems. While in the first case, the source was everything, the quest, the mean, and the answer, for this kind of instructors, the sources are a tool. The source has still to be respected and read, of course, but it has to be used in the way it was meant to be, to pass the knowledge needed to win fights. The pragmatic approach of these instructors and practitioners looks into the single sources and see their own context of application. Fencing changed through the decades and centuries to fulfill different goals and new necessities. Every historical period had its own fights, and every fight was carried out with different tools for different objectives and with different rules, dictated by law, tradition, honor, and sportive environments. This kind of instructors sees themselves not as the preserver of something dead, but as the heirs of a tradition brought back to life. They aren't the gardeners of history, they are part of history itself, and so their experience and work tries to move HEMA forward, in touch with its new environment of application, as the masters of the past did in their own times. Practice is better than art, as your exercise does well without the art, but the art is not of much use without the exercise, says the Codex 3227a. And these instructors follows this line of thought perfectly. The sword is a far better teacher than the book. The book can help you finding out a possible solution, like a friend which gives you an advice. But the problem is given by the sword and ultimately solved by the sword. It is of course easier to find out hardcore tournament fencers among these kind of instructors, but they should not be misjudged, because they tend to be in love with history and manuals almost as much as their more dogmatic counterparts. The difference is that they are more interested in using their teachings to achieve their own goals, rather than making the source and its picture-perfect representation the goal itself. Of course, I forgot, there is a third kind of instructor, the one who never read a single page of source before. We like to call them heretics. So, what is the proper way to approach HEMA? Damn, I should have started the video in another way. I hate relativistic speech. Come on, Fede, let's do it. Well, let's be real. Neither way is better than the other. Actually, they even tend to be complementary. Take me, for example. For the most part of my HEMA career, I was more dogmatic while approaching the sources, and now I use them more as a tool to become a better sword fighter. But I still keep going with my research, my interpretation work and so on, because I like them, and I keep discovering things through them. But the pragmatic approach I have nowadays focuses its gaze on the big picture. A more dogmatic approach instead is what tends to find out nuances and sometimes even manages to put into practice what I sometimes consider close to impossible. So in the end, the best way of approaching the sources is actually the way in which you prefer to do it, of course. At some point it may even change, and then change back again. Who knows? Everything is related to your objectives as a fencer, student, or simply enthusiast of this broad, chaotic and beautiful amount of ancient nerdy papers. Very good, people, I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already done it. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.